Kilo 404 Boxing. Alright, y'all, I'm on this morning commute. Probably won't get this uploaded to after work, but I'll go ahead and get this in. So I was watching Terrence Crawford's live stream on Instagram or Twitter, whatever it was. I saw it on Boxing Ego's channel. He had uploaded it. Shout out to Boxing Ego. But yeah, Terrence Crawford was talking about, wanting to fight the guys for the PBC, but he's basically saying that he's only interested in fighting top guys. And he made a point that, he said that the guys on the PBC side who started calling his name only started doing so after they took a loss. After they lost their titles. He said, Keith Thurman was uninterested in fighting him until he lost his belts. Sean Porter didn't want to unify with him, but once he lost, then he became interested in fighting him. And those are great points. It's hard to refute that when you think about how the events unfolded. He also talked about how, basically aside from Amir Khan, everybody that he fought at 47, you had people saying he was going to lose. Now, he didn't, he may have said that most people, I don't necessarily agree with that, but there were people saying that he was going to lose, just about every time he fought. A lot of guys said when he came up that, he wasn't ready for 47, too small, may not acclimate to the weight well, to the weight class well, and he probably wasn't gonna wasn't gonna be one of the top guys. And right away he fought one of the biggest, probably the biggest welterweight at the time in terms of mass, and Jeff Horn, who was coming off of beating Manny Pacquiao. Regardless of how people felt like the fight went or should have been judged, you can't dispute that Manny Pacquiao was in a back and forth, rough and tumble affair with Jeff Horn, and then Terrence Crawford went in there and just steamrolled Jeff Horn. But all of that being said, when it comes to the whole PBC side, he brought up that those guys didn't. He never heard anything about another side of the street until it came time for him to move. When he moved up to welterweight and started calling out the guys, the top guys in the welterweight division. And he said all of a sudden, that, they got all these promotional barriers and all this stuff in the way. And he said that stuff was non-existent until it came to him. He said you didn't hear about that with nobody else. He said when he was at lower weights and he was fighting PBC fighters, he didn't hear about that. It was only when he came up to 47. So, it's hard to refute some of the things that he was saying. The other thing that he said was that, these guys, about the guys when they had belts, they didn't even acknowledge him, let alone talk about unifying with him. And that's absolutely factual. We can go back and look at some of the fights that involve titles in 147 with PBC fighters, and they didn't even acknowledge when they put the champions up on the screen on Fox and on Showtime. Some of the times they didn't even acknowledge Terrence Crawford as the WBO champion. They just put up they said the champions, and they put up the other 3 belts and who held those titles at that time. I'm not 100% sure if they did the same thing at 154 as well when Jamel Charlo was fighting, and when Herb was fighting, and Laura and those guys. I'm not sure, but I do know that this is what happened at 147 with Terrence Crawford. So Terrence Crawford has some valid claims, but that said, I do like the fact that he's still talking about wanting to fight the top guys. He said he really wants Pacquiao, he really wants Spence, and he did say that Danny Garcia and Errol Spence Jr. should be a good fight. He's favoring Spence, but he's not discounting or ruling out the possibility of Danny Garcia winning. And he, talked about Danny Garcia's skill set and tenacity, and things inside of him that makes him a great fighter. So much respect to Terrence Crawford for that live stream. He said a lot of things that needed to have light shed on him. Of course, some things he said I don't necessarily agree with, but at the end of the day, he brought it to the people and said what he had to say, and put himself out there for the fans to interact with. So, I take my hat off to him for that. D-Lo 404 Boxing, I'm out.